Good evening, everybody.
Good evening again.
Good
Hey,
evening
we've
again.
got,
Good
as
evening.
always, Dr. Ricks. We have Dave, and we have a new guest tonight, John Ringenbach, all the way from Missouri, right?
Right.
All right.
Right.
See, everyone say hi to John.
Oh.
All right. So,
Hi.
Oh.
welcome everyone to Line Upon Line, episode 356. Tonight's topic is the greatest upcoming event in history, the trumpet blast announcing the second coming of Jesus Christ. Dr. Ricks, if you would start us off, that would be great.
Okay, so real good groaners for you. This is a proofreader is needed for these announcements. The proofreader is needed. Here's the announcement. Ladies, don't forget the rummage sale. It's a chance to get rid of those things you that are not worth keeping around the house. Bring your husbands. The next one reads, don't let worry kill you off. Let the church help. Miss Charlene Mason sang, I will not pass this way again, giving obvious pleasure to the congregation. Okay, this one is for tonight is the piece de resistance. The psychiatrist is crying outside his office, just bawling. A colleague walks up and says, why are you so sad? He says, well, you know the man who thought he was Captain Kirk, the one I committed to the state mental hospital last year? Yes. The one I wrote the papers on? Yes. The one, well, he escaped last night, just as I was starting to make real progress in convincing him that he was not a time traveling fleet commander. How did he escape? How did he do it? Scotty beamed him up. As members of the Star Trek generation, it makes sense, kind of. Okay, we will be celebrating October 19th. I guess it's 2 weeks and a day. We'll be celebrating. It's scary how fast time's flying. The Feast of Trumpets, and really, the Feast of Trumpets is that last trumpet blast that celebrates. Adam and Eve lost paradise because they disobeyed God. It'll be the trumpet blast showing that we will regain paradise when Christ comes in his second. By the way, did you all know that many people, including seminary graduates, do not believe in the literal, real second coming of Jesus Christ? Here's a survey I read in a Christian magazine among Christians. Um, the more education you had, the less you believed in the real second coming of Christ, and that included seminary, where you go to become um, an elder, doctor of divinity, cleric. For instance, 19% of college graduates did not believe in a real coming of Christ, where over half who were only high school grads did believe. So it's like this world is pulling people away from really believing that Christ is really coming back. And it's going to get worse. What do you think, Dave?
It could get worse.
Yeah, less people believing that Christ is really coming back.
People are educated by our common perversities. They don't believe that there is a God or that He will be back or any of that stuff. And the evidence of this is look at the crime rate. Look at what people are doing. California now is changing the severity of the laws on pedophiles. Um, they're making it much more lax. I mean, the country goes from God, and the further education, some traditional family values. What do you expect? Our
Yep.
women don't don't civilize their men. They don't civilize their children. They're not civil. Our men are not protectors of women and children. And so the world is becoming more and more violent and more promiscuous.
There's a big movement now that tells women that as mothers, they don't need a father. You know, if you think about if you were a girl, maybe 16, 17, having a baby, you're really cheating that baby if you don't have a committed father for the baby. I know that single women can raise wonderful kids and all that, but all things said and done, you know, I heard somebody say, well, one parent is just as good as two. And they said that with a straight face.
And I always ask them, is $1 as good as two? Because if you've got two, you need to give me half of what you got. I mean, it's as good as the same thing. Come on.
It's crazy. We believe, based on the Bible, when Christ does come back the second time, there won't be any question about is he coming back. He's coming back in awesome power. Let's look at our first slide, Matthew 24, please.
All right. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
And notice they're coming in the clouds and see them. And a great trumpet will blast. So there'll be no question that something is going on here, big time. It's something to look forward to. What do you think, John?
Well, yeah, in the sequence of events, you're going to have the heavenly signs, and then you're going to have that followed up with 6 trumpet plagues before the last trumpet. So it's going to be undeniable for anybody that knows anything about Bible prophecy.
Yep. And even if you don't know the Bible, you're going to say, whoa, what is this? Something is coming from the heavens, and it's going to be powerful. And like you say, undeniable. By the way, this is also part of the story of Revelation, this last trumpet blast. Revelation 5, 9, and 10.
And they sang a new song, saying, You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth.
So if someone says, what is that? Actually, Peter and the other 12 asked Christ that too. But they said, well, what is the reward of the saved? We will reign or rule on the earth. There it is in black and white. Christ will take over. He's worthy. And then we'll help him rule on the earth. I like to think of it, will we place evil government with good, godly government? Because we will be in God's family, so we'll be able to do it. And one thing that I think of all the time as you listen to world news, governments are evil. Some are more evil than others, but this world is full of evil governments. And I was listening to the history tapes and stuff. This guy was talking about the 20th century. And the interesting thing, before World War I, I won't go into all the detail. They had the Europe and other stuff. They actually said, we're too well educated, meaning the leaders and the diplomats, and we're too sophisticated to have anything but maybe little wars, but, we're too smart to do anything stupid and bad. You realize that that's what they said before World War I, just a few years before. That century had the worst things you can think of. Obviously, the horrors of World War One, the first concentration camps, first major ethnic cleansing, uh, killing people in a death factory, um, World War, or what they call total war, total destruction of societies and cities, over 100 communist gulags. The guy claims that 169 million people were killed by their own governments. Now, the communists did a lot of it, but then the Nazis and some other bad actors did some of the rest. The communists did most of it, but wow. And I'm not mentioning everything he said. There was Rwanda and a couple other killing fields in Cambodia. He rattled off some stuff that most people aren't familiar with. That all happened in the 20th century when man thought their governments were run by people that were too smart. Isn't that amazing?
We're there now. There's no change. We're there now. They think that they have all the answers. I'm thinking about a couple things. Put this in my head. When the serpent went to Eve, he whispered in her ear and he said, "Isn't it true, all knowing like God? Don't you want to be all knowing like God? I'm a spirit. You eat the fruit, you'll be all knowing." And that's what our college professors are telling these kids now. Read these books. You're going to be all knowing like me. You're going to be smarter than God. There's no God. That's a fairy tale. And I find it interesting. You listen to Paul Harvey's, it start out as a whisper. I'd start in the churches, and our churches aren't teaching anything anymore. What do we expect our society to do? We have no choice but for him to come back. I was a kid. Every kid at school knew the 10 Commandments, or a bunch of them anyway, if they didn't know all of them. And the golden rule: treat others like you want to be treated. Those are just basic things that every Christian church. Now our kids, you ask them what the golden rule is. Is it a restaurant?
Golden Corral.
They have no idea.
I saw some of these talk shows they make fun of. These are college graduates on spring break, and they ask me the 10 bills of right or the 10 commandments. They couldn't tell one from the other. They had no idea about anything. Who did we fight to gain America's independence? These are college students. You wouldn't believe the answers. The Korean. I mean, it's so stupid. They know nothing.
Mark Dice is on the beach in Great Britain. Do you know where that is? And the girl goes, no. And he points at the water. He goes, it's on the other side of the water right there. You just go that way across the water. You'll find Great Britain. Had no idea. I had a lady ask me, she was probably 35 years old, and she said, don't know, but is Germany in Europe? And I said, yes, Germany's smack dab in Europe. And it hit me. She lived in Germany for 2 years and did not know she was in Europe. But she could put a condom on a banana all day long. That's what they taught her in school.
That's what's important, right?
Well, apparently not. She's got a bunch of kids, but she didn't take it to heart.
You got to do it right. Never mind. By the way, the one thing you get from the Bible is that human nature is bad. A lot of what you get from academia and others is that people are basically good, and they will do the right thing on their own, and people will cooperate and share, and we can have a socialist utopian paradise. Now, on paper, doesn't that sound wonderful? But if you know the Bible, you know that human nature is basically selfish. We could elaborate, but you get the point. There's no way that can work. It's opposite of human nature. And yet they still keep trying that stupid stuff, and it ends up being a disaster. And I think the AOCs of the world, you want something to scare you? The next election cycle, she'll be old enough to run. They actually believe it. They said, well, they just didn't do it right. The wrong people were in charge of socialism. Let us do it, and it'll work. But only God power to remove all evil governments and start changing the hearts of men. He's the hero that we have to be excited about his coming. The Feast of Trumpets signals a significant godly event. I want to just go through these next two scriptures quickly because people wonder, well, what's the Bible model for the Feast of Trumpets? Can you read Numbers 31:6 for me, Ken?
Then Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe. He sent them to the war with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, with the holy articles and the signal trumpets.
So you've seen the cavalry movies. The trumpet was the signal for attack, retreat, and all those other kinds of things. Let's go to Joshua 6:16. This is the model. And just to put the background, the Israelites had just crossed the Jordan River. They're now entering the promised land on the very edge. And they encountered this giant fortified city with huge walls. And they have to get by that city to go into the promised land. So God has them march with priests and trumpets around the city, and everybody is totally silent. They just hear a trumpet blast, and they walk back next day. But on the seventh day, probably about 500,000 soldiers, we assume, they circle around the city. They all face in. They blow the last blast of the trumpet, and all the people shout. Go ahead and read the scriptures, Joshua 6:16.
And the seventh time it happened, and the priests blew the trumpets, that Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." So the people shouted when the priests blew the trumpet, and it happened. The people shouted with a great shout that the wall fell.
And of course, the evil government was destroyed, and the people entered the promised land. Well, that's going to happen, like John said, on that seventh trumpet blast. Christ will come back leading an angelic army and an army of saints, and will take the world for Christ and for goodness. Because that's where, and so when we celebrate the Feast of Trumpets, we're celebrating our hero down bad and bring in good. Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, and it's the idea with that last and that shout that the walls come down. It's the representative of the kingdoms of this world coming down. And he also mentioned that when the walls came down, that they all went straight up. And I thought that was interesting with 1 Thessalonians 4, when that trumpet blast occurs and then the shout, and we all go straight up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We'll get to that scripture pretty soon, too. The next topic I want to touch is the timing of the second coming trumpet is involved and mysterious. And this is a more of a tricky subject. When is this going to happen? People have, and it's clear if you read the Bible, many people have thought in the past that Christ was coming back in their lifetime. And I can understand that too. We can kick that around a little bit, but it is a tough subject. Let's read Mark 24:36 first, and we'll discuss the timing, because this is one of the issues most people are most concerned about.
You mean Matthew?
I'm in Matthew 24:36.
But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of the heavens, but my Father alone.
So, when you read, that's kind of surprising. Now, we don't know what Christ knows now, but at least at the time when he was talking to his 12 disciples, he did not know. And apparently even the leading angels did not know. Only the Father And is it possible that the Father is keeping his confidence? When he's ready, he'll pull the trigger. Maybe that's my analogy, and he makes the decision, and he hasn't decided. Well, I'm not saying, I don't know what the Father knows, of course, and I can't say what he knows and when he knows it. But what do you think, John?
Yeah, he made it clear that when the disciples asked him, "Will you at this time?" and he says, "It's in the Father's authority." And when you look at Revelation 5, you see that all the end time events are on that scroll, sealed with 7 seals, and it's in the Father's hand. And it's there now until he holds out his hand and Christ takes it out of his hand. Then there's a ceremony in heaven, and then Christ opens the first seal, and that 7 years begins. Daniel's 70th week, and we're in the tribulation heading for that last trump.
Yeah. That last 3.5 years, we talked about that last week when the temple is desecrated. Even there are a few days overlap, so it still may be hard to nail down the exact date, but we'll know it's very, very close. But the question is, when will that temple be desecrated? No one really knows. Let's go to Ken.
And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of the lawlessness is already at work. What did I do?
If not, I can tell you what it says.
No, I don't. I couldn't open that last email you sent. It wouldn't let me open it.
These computers keep messing things up. Anyway, 24:44 says, "In a day when you think not, that's when I will come." In other words, here's how I interpret 24:44. We might know when it's getting close because we're watching the signs, and a lot of signs. But if we ever go out of our way and pin down a separate date, and several key ministers have done this. I remember one put it on billboards all across the middle of America. It was like November 1989 or some, I forgot the date. He actually put the date on billboards. Obviously, he was wrong. In other words, it's almost saying, be cautious about being sure you know. And you might know the season, you know it's getting close, but don't set your heart on any date. And you know why I think God doesn't want to set our hearts on any one date? What do you think, John?
Well, yeah, then you just sit around, take it easy, and wait for that day to show up before you decide to get ready.
And that's not what God wants.
No. You wouldn't do your work. Nothing would get done.
Any additional thoughts, Ken, on why it's bad to set a specific, and why it might be bad for us spiritually?
Well, it's going to be wrong. So why waste your time? They've been setting dates for, all my lifetime. I've been seeing dates get set. One guy, what was it, 5-10 years ago, kept setting it back every time it didn't come in. Every time it didn't happen. So
I knew a guy back in 1980 that was preaching all over the Tampa Bay area. Went back on June whatever in 1980. So I went over to his church, and there was tons of people outside looking up, and it was raining. And the only one who vanished was him. Nobody else was raptured. He was gone.
Yeah, and by the way, we can say this date could be an interesting date, but don't set a specific date, because I think you can be disillusioned, like you're saying, Ken, and it's bad for you spiritually to get disillusioned. Why didn't God come? You know the big story about 1843 and apparently, well, a group that used to be the Church of God, Seventh Day, It's a long, sad story, but it didn't come. What about the year zero? They said if the following year it didn't come, and a whole lot of people were disillusioned. And it's just not a smart thing to set a specific date. Um, no matter how biblically sharp you think you are, you're probably not as sharp as you think.
Yeah, it's hard to set a date before it ever begins.
Anyway, if you start looking at the Bible with a lot of details, there's so many things that are flexible. Like you can look at when Judah went into captivity. Well, actually, there were three waves. Or was it the beginning of the siege of Jerusalem or the last of the final siege? Which date is God going to start the counts on? And you can do that with all kinds of things. You can even do that with American history. Well, when did America start? Was it 1775, 76 when they started this Declaration of Independence? Was it when they won the American Revolution, the Paris Peace Treaty? Was that 1882, 83? Or was it when they finally got the Constitution were first president? You see, you got three different starting dates. Well, all that's true in Bible prophecy, and there's so much flexibility. You think you've got God locked on. I think that's would you say, David, that's a bit of arrogance?
I'll mute myself. I don't know what to call it. We're told don't waste your time with useless genealogies and why waste my time with these things? I've got so much other stuff I've got to work on to straighten out and overcome on my own. So when he's going to come back, we don't. If Christ doesn't know, I'm not figuring it out. And my thing is to be ready when he does come, or when my final day comes, we've been repentant and working and overcoming. So for me, that's the story.
Good point. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians 2:6 now, Ken.
All right, and now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming.
That now restrained word. Now, I believe, just from reading this, I've read it many times, the Thessalonians knew what Paul had preached. So he's writing a letter to people who had probably heard hours and hours of Paul speaking. So they probably knew more of what he meant than we do. But there's some spiritual restraint holding back the devilish world. I assume it's some angelic force, but whatever it is, there's some kind of who now restrains. And so that restraint is there. And we just have to realize it is there. And the celebration of the Feast of Trumpets is when that last trump is sounded and Christ is about coming. That's kind of like our birthday, real birthday into the family of God. Isn't that a big deal? Mm-hmm. Something worth celebrating.
It amazes me the other churches don't even look at that. I don't know if any of the Protestant churches even looking at that. I've never heard the breakaway groups must do, but I've never heard a Protestant church talk about the return on the Day of Trumpets and what any of that means. I believe that the Jews believe that the Messiah is going to come on that day. But I think that they believe he's going to come on that day. But I have never heard anybody else express. How can you have all this supposed knowledge and not looking at the original holy days and what they mean. And we've got 3 of them coming up on us. And it's amazing how many people don't know anything about them.
Oh, we got an article out of some major Christian magazine. They just tell the truth that Constantine basically created a new religion by blending sun god worship, S-U-N, with the S-O-N, Son of God, and just bluntly states it. And I thought, wow, we'll have to write that up someday for some future podcast. But in other words, historically, the ones who know history, church, really know that. But few of the ministers or their scholars tell their people any of that stuff. Newsmax. Okay. I got it wrong. It was Newsmax.
I find
You notice
that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
You notice how they're taking out everything that's actually Christian and leaving in everything that's pagan. All the pagan stuff they're leaving in. Anything that's actually related to Christ, the world is pulling out. They're fine with leaving in the Christmas trees and all the accoutrements of their pagan stuff, but most of the people want, no, not all, there are Christians out there that keep, nominals that want to keep it that way, but a good part of the country, it's acceptable to rip out what little bit of Christ is actually in the world and replace it and just leave behind the paganism.
By the way, I have a theory, because there is a teeny bit of the book of Luke in some Christmas pageant. So a little bit of the Bible. Is it possible a day could come where Halloween would be as big or bigger than Christmas? We got magazines in the mail yesterday, and they're really heavily promoting Halloween. It's the night of all hallowed spirits. I mean, that's the Catholic Church, and then, and then they blended it with all the pagan Druid stuff, worshiping fear of the dead, superstition of the dead, etc. But do you think it's possible that Sunday, Halloween, is almost as pure pagan as you can get, may become as big as Christmas, if not bigger someday?
A girl in my school a couple of years ago, she was talking to me. Her grandmother's Mexican. And I said something about her. She said her grandmother had to go back to Mexico. And I said, why? She said, to go back and worship the devil. And for Halloween. And they taught that's okay. They worship everybody. Just straight up, she goes to Mexico to worship the devil. And I said, what do they do? And she said, mostly everybody just drinks until they drop.
By the way, most people don't know, in the ancient pagan world, they had many gods. Every little city, empire had their own little god. And there was very little doctrine per se. You just worship gods because different gods have powers over war, crops, fertility, healing, sailing, commerce, all, different ones. And so you could worship all kinds of gods. A new god came along, well, I'll worship him too. And they didn't see a problem with it until Christianity and Judaism came along and said, no, there's only one God. But can you see much of the world still has that kind of thinking? We can blend all kinds of religions together.
I think Paul explained that when he said, who's this God? And they said, that's the unknown God. He said, that's the one I worship. The one you know nothing about.
And what's the difference between all this blending and saying, well, to me, any day can be the Sabbath? What's the difference between changing that and anything else they decide to change? Well, I just choose to do it on Sunday. It doesn't matter what day. I mean, it's all the same. It's all the same garbage that they try to pull. They just want it the way they want it. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong.
Well, Rick Warren tried to make it Wednesday night.
Where did he pull that out of? I mean,
wow.
Out of a hat or what?
He tried. Yeah, he tried to do that a couple of years ago, and it kind of blew up in his face. I guess
I never heard of this guy. Who is he?
And they were already doing Rick Warren.
He's famous. I've heard his name.
Super famous. Yeah.
Was he Did he get to do the convocation in the
Yes, he
Obama
did.
administration?
Nah, I don't know who. Probably was Obama.
I think it was Obama. Rick Warren. It's something for them.
Something. I made a joke. I called his church something like Mountain something church or
Saddleback.
Saddleback.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds just about as good.
I called it Brokeback.
Send your emails right to Dave, please.
I don't care. Send them. He had a plan to worship and it just kind of didn't work, and he started losing people, and so back. How hard is it? Just read it and do it. I've always said an atheist would do a better job interpreting this Bible to me than a Catholic priest or a minister of one of these churches, because they all come at it with their own opinion. I don't believe it, but that's what it says. So, I'd rather hear it from that guy than some guy that's going to try to preach me into hell or heaven or whatever else they got. I had a lady call me today and said she was going to invite, this is how messed up our world is, wanted to invite her friend to come to my school for classes, but she wanted to talk to me first, which already is a sign. And I said, okay, she's half woman and half man. I said, don't bring her in my school. Don't bring her in my school. She said, well, she was a bridesmaid at my wedding. I said, okay, don't bring her in my school. So she said, we talked about it for about, 15 minutes or so. And she said, I understand. She's real sweet and understood. But I have children in there. It'll run half my business off. And then somebody's going to take a chance and hurt her or whatever it is. And then I'm going to get sued.
You are so politically incorrect, Dave.
Yeah, because I know.
You're right, but
I know, because right after I heard her, I know I'm going to be sued.
Let's go to 1 Thessalonians 4:15.
Here we go. All right, I got it. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout and with the voice of an archangel and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord.
That last trumpet will be a wonderful thing. We'll always be with the Lord after we hear that. All we have to do is remain repentant and faithful, hopefully for just a few more years, right? Or something like that. Because Satan's age is going to end soon. That signal is coming. And even better, we're going to be like Superman. You had a cape and you wanted to jump off the bed and fly. Well, I'm assuming the laws of gravity will no longer apply to us. You can.
Dr. Rick's 20s, and I dressed like Superman everywhere I went.
And you got people to believe it, right?
People loved me. I'd go to the store. They thought I was part of the promotion at the store. I'd carry the groceries out for them and talk with them. My brother would follow me around with his camera, taking pictures of me dressed like Superman.
Yeah. Oh, I bet that was a beautiful sight, right?
I'll send you a picture right now.
Okay, you got my cell phone. Yeah, send it to me. Superman. Well, let's go to 1 Corinthians 15:51. Someday you will be Superman, Dave.
That's right. All right. I tell you a mystery. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound and the dead will be raised, incorruptible, and we shall be changed, for this corruption must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. Brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Anything you have to put up with now is not in vain, because someday you'll be like Superman, immortal, incorruptible. That's a nice way of saying bulletproof. You could jump off a 3-story building, and even if you did hit the ground, it wouldn't hurt you. You'd break the ground instead of yourself. And
I
think
can do
about
that now.
You'd never get sick.
Yeah, if I fall 3 stories, something's gonna break.
Yeah, that's true. You can break the ground.
Yeah, right after
Exactly.
you do.
But and in a way, like it says, whatever we have to put up with now is not in vain. Think about it. We'll be bulletproof, forever young, right? Just like David and myself, right? We're forever young, right, Dave?
Forever young, but 10 years ago, I thought I was bulletproof. Not so much anymore.
Now you can't walk standing up straight, right?
Uh,
Sometimes I have to walk
Okay.
straight. I have no other options.
well, the Feast of Trumpets that we'll be celebrating on the 19th is symbolic of the coming, when the real trumpet sounds. Whether Christ will come back on the day of the Feast of Trumpets or not, I don't know if we can dare say that with certainty. It's obviously a possibility, but Father can do anything he wants, right? God can't do it because I didn't permit it, because you thought it, whatever we think doesn't matter. But when that last trumpet does sound, symbolic of our victory in Jesus, isn't that a great thing? And we'll be celebrating that in 2 weeks. Oh, and I know you're thinking, are you ready for the feast? Whenever I hear that, I go, ah! No. But I'm getting there.
When I asked before the program, that's the reaction I got too.
Yeah, we're not ready. We're still debating things like, oh, do we want to do it? Can we do it? Should we? Whatever. And by the way, it's a big victory for the world. Let's go to Matthew 24:22.
And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened.
Now the elect could be Israel, but I like to think of the spiritual Israel, us. God is going to save the planet for our sake. Well, physical Israel, but mostly spiritual Israel. He's going to save the planet for our sake, which means no matter how smart people think they are, they would poison this planet if given enough time.
The elite say that they want to get rid of the useless eaters. They use a eugenics thing now, but now it's everybody who is an elite.
Well, they got to have some of
Anybody-
us, around to do the work for them, like growing their food and cleaning their cars.
But it's like, can you see? Let's say if they develop chemical weapons, biological weapons, and maybe some kind of radioactive weapons that we aren't familiar with yet, because you don't know what they're experimenting with, in various military labs. Can they control it? Once you get something started, then the other side finds out and they retaliate. Can you keep control of? I think one of the most dangerous things are biological weapons. I realize this Wuhan virus probably got out of a lab by accident. Then China decided, well, we're going to suffer. We're going to have the whole world suffer with us. And we're now finding a relatively benign, I said relatively, they have biological weapons that really wipe out large chunks of the population. Really terrible stuff. And they can engineer it to spread more easily. You think about the potential of evil men with their finger on that kind of button.
My doctor said if they release a manufactured virus that they have the technology to make and have created, and they have them in jars or whatever, that it would die so fast, so many of them, it would not be a common cold virus like we just looked at. There would be people dropping in the streets and everywhere. It would spread that fast. That's the technology they have.
Yeah, and now with I'm not sure about everything, but there's so much world travel. If you could just get a few secret aid, you go to all these capitals of the world, and you got a vial of this, and you dump it in the water supply or spray it wherever, and you coordinate it. Within a few days, horrible things could happen to all your enemies. But then the enemies have their version; they could retaliate, and then you think of chemical poisoning. All I'm saying is, based on that scripture, people think they can control dangerous weapons, but they really, based on the Bible, I'd say they can't. I'd even use an analogy. This is maybe purely political. The Democrats, at least some of them, have unleashed and rioting on cities as a way to help them, the chaos will help them win the election, they hope. But is it possible the chaos is like a fire? Once you light it, you can't just control it that.
Oh yeah, it'd get out of hand. Obviously, they couldn't.
What's and they're actually planning it. I mean, they don't hide it anymore. And there's some websites out there, Revolution Communism, and some of these sites. So they come right out and say, we want 25% of the population gone. The resources should go to the elite. They should not be left to these basically useless eaters. So
there was something else I was going to look up, and I didn't get time to do it. But the gist of it, what I got out of it, and this is the Fed, the Federal Reserve, is working on a payments or on a system. You know, when we had the the payout when the $1,200 everybody got. They're saying it took too long. We needed to get the money into the hands of the people faster. They're working on the mechanism for an electronic virtual money, so to speak, that they can use to get the funds into people's hands immediately. And they're working on the back room mechanism to put that all together, and which means they will have your money will be in an account that the Fed will control. And they're getting it ready now for the next time it's needed. But they're putting that in place, which is another part of the puzzle they need to put the mark in place.
That means they can also take it.
Yes, they can put it in. And check this out. You've heard of negative interest rates, right? So if you have money in the bank and there's negative interest rates, they start taking money out of your account because the interest rate is now negative. Instead of gaining money, you're losing money, which encourages people to spend that money fast. Buy a house, buy a car, buy this, buy, consume and buy, and you got to move the money fast in order for it to not disappear.
And it can only be electronic.
And that's what they're working on. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is an actual fact. You can find the articles on the web. I just wanted to look it up and get the details. I haven't had a chance to do that because I just heard about it today.
Can I just
Cashless society.
Just
more control in the government's hand. Yes. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ricks.
Go ahead.
I just sent you it's 5 minute long from Robert Kiyosaki talking about what's going on with the money and the gold and all that. I think you'll find that interesting.
Okay, good.
Yeah. One thing is for sure, we don't know when, where, and how beast and bad governments can do things, but I know the people on the far left want the government to have more control. Now, they probably think it'll help the socialism paradise, but the socialists have admitted that, including Karl Marx, they will have to get really mean at first to get rid of the people who resist. In other words, we have to do a lot of people in. The famous quote in the French Revolution was, we have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And that justified, 50,000 guillotines, some number like that. which in the French Revolution was pretty gruesome terms. That's why I say mankind can't do it without God's help. God has to come back and save us
They were
from ourselves. No matter how well educated
They were
we think people are.
guillotining everybody in France, dog catcher, you name it. They were just grabbing people. It seemed like they were just grabbing anybody that looked at them funny, and they were guillotining them.
You know, the
It
purity
got
of the
real bad.
revolution. Let's go to Revelation 11:15.
Then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, "The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. And he shall reign forever and ever, saying, We give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was and who is to come, because you have taken your great power and reigned."
The victory of good over evil is coming. We can celebrate it at the Feast of Trumpets. Let's go to Romans 8:21. Just adds a little more as to what the world is really.
Because the creation itself also was delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that this whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now.
The world's only hope, and the world is groaning for it. Now, can you play a little bit of one of the greatest pieces of music of Western civilization, Handel's? And we're going to go to Revelation 19:4 to this famous music from Handel's Messiah.
I'll give it a shot here. All right.
It's a great song.
Go ahead. It's coming through my headphones again.
Okay. It'll dissipate in a second. But let me tell you a little story about that. My son and his one of his favorite girlfriends they were both in the choir. He was all dressed up, surrounded by the Southeast Missouri Orchestra choir. They sang this in the Rose Theater with acoustics. It was unbelievable how uplifting. It was like, that is a great song.
Did you want Revelation 19:14 now?
Okay, let's read Revelation 19.
And the armies in heaven clothed. And the armies in heaven clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations, and he himself will rule them with a rod of iron. He himself treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God, and he has on his robe and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Well, anyway, it's a great piece of music, and at least there's some Bible in there in the Western world, and I'm sure the Bible, in spite of all the bad pagan traditions, it has made a difference, and that's a great piece of music, and that's really what's coming. The true King is coming to earth. We're not going to heaven to shuffle harp music. So why should Christians keep trumpets and stay alert? Because in closing, that's the final thing we need to look at. The whole issue is, we talked about Halloween getting too important, but why should we celebrate the Feast of Trumpets? I think we should celebrate the great hope for mankind that Christ is coming, our hero, like on a white horse to save the world. And it's like I like to think of it like a movie or a novel. In the movie, in the middle, the villain thinks he's winning. He lets the villains laugh, or maybe they're a little more scary than my little laugh. But the villain laughs and looks like he's going to win, and the hero had to jump off a bridge and landed in the stream. But somehow he goes downstream and he gets mended, and he comes back in the last scene and vanquishes the villain, and in the end, the good guys always win. Well, actually, that is true. In the end, God wins.
Yeah, there was back in the 60s or 70s, there was a lot of movie makers decided to make the movies where the villain wins in the end. I never liked that. That wasn't right. Or the villain dies at the end, or the good guy dies at the end. Them were never good movies.
I always like to assume when you read a novel or book that no matter how dark it looks in the middle, the hero or heroine will somehow come out alive, even though it looks like, how did they survive that? And they will win in the end,
yep.
Right? That's how things are supposed to be. They win in the end. Let's go to 1 Thessalonians 5:4.
But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep or as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah. A lot of people say, well, doesn't that contradict the words where Christ said nobody knows the exact date? I don't think it's a contradiction. I think they build on each other, augments. I think what Paul is saying, when you read everything Paul wrote, he knows that it's going to come, if you read previous verses, like a thief in the night. The exact date will not be nailed down, but sober and watchful and not fall asleep. If you pass away before Christ comes back, that's still good advice. Don't fall asleep spiritually.
Well, I think our country is past very little hope for this country turning it around.
But here's the but. I was throwing it. I have no idea. Aren't there still a lot of, and I'll find there's somewhat reasonable people in Middle America?
Yep.
Yeah, there are. But when you talk to our kids, I watch those videos and they ask, what about politics or whatever, and they go, well, communism's the greatest thing there ever has been. I mean, there's capitalism's an abject failure. It's just it's the most horrible, racist, terrible. Communism's fair, and these kids, I mean, they'll fight and argue to their last breath. I had a friend of mine went to Cuba and he said, oh, it was wonderful. The people were so nice. I'm going, yeah, go to the grocery store. You got A or B. That's what you get.
Yeah. They don't have a or B cereal aisle. They have a cereal.
Right.
And it's crappy. I heard somebody talk about when they got universal health care. The problem is when you get to the hospital, they don't have anything.
Exactly.
They got nothing in the hospital. I mean, it's bare bones in the hospital. Doesn't it make you mad when some spoiled American kid, probably somewhat middle class, with his expensive smartphone, somewhat expensive tennis shoes, and other goodies, and video games and Xboxes, and he's talking about capitalism is no good. And he's, I mean, disrespectfully, probably eats a ton of junk food, has all the food he could ever want, and then some, pizza every day, because of capitalism. And yet he says it's bad. You think You idiot. What do you think it would be like in communist countries?
You wouldn't have an iPhone. You you wouldn't have 200 different kinds of sneakers. You wouldn't have any of this. In Russia, they had one car. What was the name of that car? What was that junk car in Russia? Oh, I can't remember.
Was it
No,
the
that was
Yugo?
Yugoslavia.
Was it
I'm talking
called
about that
Yugo?
Russian car. Oh,
I know
I
the one
seen
you
one.
mean. The
I
doors
seen
wouldn't
one
fit.
a couple years ago. A guy pulled into the gas station where I was at. He had one on a trailer. The thing was made out of. I mean, part of it was made out of cardboard, literally. The trunk and everything. It was car. It was this thing. It was old. It was from the '60s or something, '60s or '70s. But this thing was absolute trash. He got it for next to nothing. And if you wanted a TV, you had to put yourself on a list. Took you years, and a TV cost 10 times what it would have costed in this country. And it was junk. Houses were catching on fire from the junk televisions they were. People have no idea how they got it. You will not have a $200 flat panel TV. You'd be lucky to get a flat panel TV, and if you did, it's going to cost you thousands.
And like with a car, you have to get permission, do a ton of paperwork, and then wait 5 to 10 years to get in line to get a crappy car. And there are no choices of colors and styles. You get what's available.
You get
which
what the
isn't much.
commies let you buy.
And if you complain about it, there's still some room in the gulag.
Oh yeah, and by the way, if you don't like the job they assign you, too bad, because you're not quitting and getting another one.
Yeah. The only promotion that matters, really, is playing politics and going up the Communist
Which means
Party
turning
line.
in your friends and buddies
Otherwise,
and neighbors.
Yeah. Now, I do think in a few cases you can get a few extra things in your ration card if you turned in your friends. I actually know some stories where they had people spy on each other. That's why I didn't like the idea when New York and California told neighbors, spy on people that aren't wearing their mask and whatever else they weren't doing. That struck so much of communism, it's scary.
That's what remember the disappearniks in Russia? The Soviet Union?
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me. I don't have any friends and I don't know my neighbors. No incentive there.
I went to my doctor today. I went to my doctor's office for my annual checkup. And they no mask signs on the door. No one told me I had to wear a mask. And it was perfect. Because of course it was out in the country, but they didn't seem to care.
Let me
tell you how to get in and out of the doctor's office real quick. Produce a letter from your doctor that says you cannot wear a mask. You walk in, you're in and out. They don't take your temperature.
Hey, John, are they making you wear a mask where you are? Because you're in the country.
No, it's strongly suggested in the grocery store, Walmart, Aldi's, but no, they're not making you. I was in Walmart today and half the people weren't wearing a mask.
Oh, just about everybody around here does.
They weren't screaming at you or anything?
Yeah.
They didn't guilt you?
Because it's the holiday invaded from St. Louis City and County, come out here for all the canoeing and the fishing. And so Walmart is full of strangers you never see except on a holiday. And they bring all out with them. So I'm happy to wear a mask on the holidays in Walmart.
When we are out, we don't go to Walmart, and that's the only store in this town is Walmart. But when we go out and we don't wear a mask, and everybody has a mask on them. Once in a blue moon, you'll see a family without a mask, and Sandy goes, "Look, they have faces." Wow, a face.
This may prove to be one of the biggest hoax. Well, you might know this, but the New England Journal of Medicine at the end of May put out an article saying masks are of little or no use. Very, very little use. Viruses are so tiny. Now, if somebody is full of phlegm and are coughing all over the place, you put a mask on them, it will limit the amount they cough. They'll still get stuff out of the mask, but it may cut down the spread. Somebody's coughing and hacking, but Most of the time, masks are of no benefit, and they're not good for your breathing.
I told Sandy I'm going to wear Wonder Woman panties as a mask because they're kosher.
Oh.
Well, let's read our last scripture
Oh, all right.
while we're out of trouble. Before we get
The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ.
By the way, joint heirs. You're heir with the Rockefellers or the Gates. We're going to be heirs with the greatest power in the universe. That's what we're going to celebrate on trumpets. That's one. By the way, I hate biased news and lies. Yesterday, unemployment, significantly lower than they expected, and economic productivity was higher than expected. Two pieces of good news. Guess what? Including the business media. I don't know why the business media has gotten all hung up. They don't like good news anymore for political reasons. None of you have probably heard any of that. It's all been hidden, and they'll find, well, we're not sure we can get a virus. And that may be true. But they find something negative to focus on. And sometimes the stories you spike are just as big as a lie. And I think it's bad for America, bad for the world. According to these people I listen to, engine driving the world, Europe is still having some economic problems. And China, they're having some. If the American economy goes down, the whole world will drop into a great recession. So American economy is more important than we think. There are people who are willing to drag this economy down for the sake of politics, even though it may hurt a lot of people. And according to a few experts, including a fair number of people starving. Our country, I'm not that there isn't enough food, but their income is so reasonable they can buy food. But if their income drops, they can't buy the food, and the very, very poorest of them will starve. So, in other words, the world economy is more important than we might think.
And I'll tell you, you can't. The economy is not bad because you try to go buy some lumber today. Has anybody priced lumber recently? It is ridiculously expensive. You go get a 4x4 treated is over $20 a piece right now. For one 4x4 treated. A sheet of plywood, 3/4 inch, good one side is in the $45 range. It's ridiculous. Everybody was staying home, so everybody was building. You can't get anybody to do any work because they're all booked. It's bad. I mean, the economy's good, but getting stuff done is not easy.
We 6-7 months ago had somebody come out and give us a quote on building our walk-in closets and putting shelving and making it nice, and they quoted us something like $2,000, something like that. I called them back this week. They didn't call me for a day or two. Finally did call me back. Then they almost doubled the price. I said, in the last 6 months, you doubled your price. And she says, yep. I said, okay, well, thanks a lot.
We called to get a fence built. That's why I know what the price of 4x4s are. We called to get a fence put up. I thought maybe, $5-6 grand. They wanted $11,000 to put this fence up. $11,000. Guess what I'm doing this week, Sunday and Monday, this holiday weekend? I'm putting up a fence.
Yeah, the thing is good. Depends where you are, but there are many things in the economy. I think auto sales are coming up, and house prices. You would think with this so-called Great Recession, house prices would be declining. No, house prices are shooting up unbelievably high. If you got with the low, they have low interest rates to borrow. I know another retired prof. He said, man, with these low interest rates, I just can't help myself. In a very desirable city, not one here. He's bought at least. I said, man, with these interest rates, it's a great deal. He plans on going there to retire because it's. But think about that. House prices are going up, and with any luck, he'll probably sell it in 4 or 5 years and make money off of it.
Yeah.
So if you've got a place to live, you're lucky, because if you were buying right now, you probably got to pay.
Yeah,
a
right
pretty
now
good
inventory
price.
is real low on houses. I mean, I was the real estate agent we used to sell a house was telling us that real estate inventory is real low.
And you people in Florida, you got another problem. The New Yorkers are coming your way, Dave.
I got one in my house right now.
They're hard to get rid of, ain't they?
I kind of like that one. Oh, she's not happy with me right now. Everybody knows you're from New York. The minute you talk, they go, oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, so we'll see what the world economy does, but I think the media is really doing a disservice by spiking good news and pushing or almost making up bad news or overemphasizing bad
Oh, they
news,
just
which
make
is
it up out of
terrible.
whole cloth now. They don't even care. There's nothing truer than the truth is falling in the streets today. It's just bad. Nothing I see on the news can I believe. Absolutely zero. I don't care what it is anymore. I don't believe it.
But CNN produces all the news that's worth saying. Isn't that their
That's
model or
the
something
New
like that?
York Times. All the news that's worth printing.
Oh, it's New York Times. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but CNN, you
Oh
can really
yeah.
trust them,
Yeah.
right?
Didn't Wolf Blitzer say that they're not biased or something like that? I don't know.
I love their original name was
Oh
the
yeah, that's
Clinton
what I
News
called them in
Network.
the
I know
'90s.
that's all changed.
No, it's a,
You betcha.
Well, any rate, next week we're going to look at the 10 days build up to atonement. And I think it's spiritually more important than we think. We like to just talk about that a little bit next Friday. And I want to thank John and Dave and of course Ken for putting together a nice podcast.
Well, if that's it, I'm going to say good night, everyone. I hope you enjoy your Sabbath, and we will see you all back here again next week. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We're happy you could make it, so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we've got to say goodbye.